Sometimes an author comes along with something new to say about how we should view ourselves in the vast sweep of history. Today I'm joined by Martin Campbell, who may be just such a voice. Hello Martin,
Hi,
thank you for talking to me today.
you're welcome.
And we're here to discuss your newly released novel, Queen Julius Caesar. And tell me, do you find talking about your work easy or is it a challenge?
Um, Challenging in that it takes quite a while because it's historical, so I like to make sure that I've got the facts there to base the fiction over.
That's great, thank you. So tell me a bit about yourself and what motivates you to write.
Okay, well, I'm in my 50s and I've lived a few places over the UK, and it's taken me a while to get to writing because I had a full time career in the health service. I then was very ill, and it then gave me the opportunity to think about okay, now I can do this. I've got a degree in English, let's get on and write something I've always wanted to write.
And how would you describe your writing style?
That's a bit more difficult to say in a way, isn't it? I like to make sure that the reader is engaged. I like there to be a little element of fun. So I have a narrator that it's not my voice necessarily that the reader's hearing, but is a voice usually of a god or a goddess, who can bring a slight element of humour whilst also being clear with the reader about actually this is the fact.
And why do you choose gods or goddesses as your narrators?
Well, I think it gives an overview. Right? That's what's useful about them, in that they are omnipresent. They can be at any point in time, at any point in the story, and view it from their perspective. And therefore, they can give a bit more voice to me in a way than I can give just as writing third party. So I think it makes it quite fun. I think it makes it, I hope, engaging for the readers.
And in your first novel, The Love God, which was about Antinous, who's known as the gay god, I understand that the use of the more modern noun gay in ancient contexts is a taboo for some people. And why do you think that is?
There are a lot of people that are very protective about their view of history, and they're protective of what they've learnt generally or what they've read. And historians and archaeology has got fairly clear limits around what it perceives to be the correct facts. So I think it's important sometimes to take that context back a little bit and think, okay, how can we view this differently, and are there different facts?
And you're writing a series of novels about lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender history. Why is this so important?
I think it's important when you look at the context of where we are now in June 2020. A lot's happening around the world. We've had the Me Too movement around putting women's rights back on the table. We currently have the Black Lives Matter, you could call it a revolution, of people from the black community saying, hold on a minute, history has got us all wrong, you've subverted us, you've oppressed us for all this time. Why are there statues of the people that oppressed us? Let's change this, let's move on. And I think it's the same to an extent around LGBT history. It's been whitewashed. So you'll find statues of Antinous, who I wrote about in my first novel. Often when you go to the Vatican and view them, they have the biggest collection of Antinous statues in the world. Some of them are in the basement, some of them are shoved in corners, some of them are not labelled. So it's sometimes difficult to find where that gay history is. So my intention is to try and put some of that back on the map. And some of it will be controversial because some of it will be showing historical figures that people have never thought about anything other than potentially being a heterosexual. So by saying, look, there's a different side potentially here, and there are records that show that generally don't get written about, I'm putting that back on the map.
And going back to your current novel, could you tell us a little bit about Queen Julius Caesar?
Yes, I mean it's something that I just picked up on reading generally through Roman history. That there were a couple of references to Julius Caesar being called Queen Julius Caesar by senators in the Roman Senate, so in the highest political house of ancient Rome. And obviously that intrigued me. Why were they calling him that of all things? So I started to read around it and found that there is this amazing story that when he was younger, Caesar was looking at how to get into the military, how to kind of make himself a bit more of a name. He approached a general, a giant guy called Thermus, who was fighting battles in the Mediterranean. And what Thermus said was, actually what I need is someone that can actually be a bit more strategic, a bit more of a front man for me. And what I need right now is ships. I need to fight with ships. There's this guy, this king in the north of Turkey, as it is now, it was then part of Greece. He's got a lot of ships. Go and get me ships. So that on the surface it sounds like a quick diplomatic mission. Go there, secure the ships, come back. Caesar was there for a year, and that's where the controversy comes from in ancient Rome, and that's where I can write about it. Because why was he there for a year? There was absolutely no reason for him to be there for a year. And that's where then these rumours start in ancient Rome about, actually, was he having an affair with the king? I've expanded that slightly to say, well, actually, maybe he could have an affair with the queen as well. Who knows? So it gave me an opportunity to write a story that creates a different view of Caesar. I'm also epileptic. Caesar was epileptic, a lot of people think. You look at Caesar and the way he works, the way he looks at things in great detail, he may have had elements of autism. So the way I've characterised Caesar is very different, and those things are not weaknesses, they're strengths. They give you the opportunity to look at life differently, decide, actually, I don't need to be this or that or that. I can go directly to this point, and that's what autism does, and potentially what epilepsy does, because it focuses the mind. And I think that's what Caesar did.
So Queen Julius Caesar is a historical novel, but I gather telling that part of Caesar's life has proved controversial. I guess it picks up on some of the ground we've covered, but is it a good example to help listeners to understand the issue?
Definitely. It's been interesting. To do a bit of publicity for the book, I put something on a Roman history Facebook page, and the slapback I had on that was astonishing and very immediate. And all people had seen was the cover of the book. They hadn't read the book yet, but they immediately were judging it as attacking Caesar, as undermining Caesar. And you start then to analyse that and think, okay, so this is what people think about when they think about gay people. They think about them being weak. They think about them being effeminate. They don't think that they could be a leader of people. Forgetting, of course, that the greatest general of all time was Alexander the Great, who conquered most of the known world at the time, right the way down to India. He was gay. His partner was called Hephaestion. People want to ignore that. They want to just focus on the general, and the same with Caesar. And people don't like the word gay. It's a modern word, clearly. It's been around for around 100 years, possibly slightly younger. And people don't like it being applied to Roman history or any other ancient history. But they had their own words. They had catamites, they had Senadus, they had other words that they would have used to describe gay men. Often not very nice, just the same way that gay initially wasn't very nice, and argumenters adopted that word back to say, well, you don't own that word, we now own that word, so if you want to call us gay, fantastic, because we love it now. And I think that would have happened in Rome as well. They would have had their own words, and doubtless when they were screaming in the Senate at Caesar saying, you're Queen Julius Caesar, they may have been saying, you're a puff, they might have been saying, you're a queen, you're a queer. So all I'm doing is helping the modern reader to understand that that's what we're talking about, that Caesar may have had what we would define as a gay relationship, and therefore I'm comfortable using that word, and I think most readers would be as well.
And do you think that Caesar had a relationship with the king?
It's very difficult to know. I think the key to looking at it is that year. Why was he there for a year? There's no obvious need for that. So what was going on in that year? And the fact that the Senate was saying those things, there's no smoke without fire. And that's the way I kind of view this, that maybe something did go on. And the way I've written it, as readers will find out, is that someone gets that word back to Rome. And I don't think that that's a problem, really. I think that's the way it could have happened. And obviously people have their own judgments about it. People get angry about it. People already on the internet have been wildly angry with me for putting their Caesar in a different context. But you look at any historical fiction, that's what it does. And I'm comfortable with that.
And what are you working on now?
So, my next book is about a little-known Roman emperor towards the end of the Roman Empire called Attica Baths. And he is characterised in a lot of the ancient writing at the time, Roman writers, as being this evil, transgender, although they wouldn't have used that word again, that's a modern word, person who was not the kind of Roman emperor they perceived that they needed. And he's written about in such disparaging, negative ways. And again, I want to look at that. And you look at the way modern people look at transgender people, is generally very negative too. In America, they're legislating against trans people. So what's that about? And why are people so angry? And who was this young man? He was probably about 16, maybe 18 when he was assassinated. What motivated him? Why was he an emperor? And that excites me, that interests me, and I think it will excite LGBT people, particularly trans people, because did they know that there was a Roman emperor who wore women's clothing, who had a male lover openly? These things are not talked about.
And all this research that goes into your novels, do you enjoy it or do you find it a chore?
I love it. And in a way, that's the joy for me, is often more the research than the writing, because you have to hunt. And I think there's that sort of human instinct to want to kind of hunt things down and find things. And it takes time. My first book, on and off, because I had a full-time job at the time, took 5 years. This one's taken a year and a half. But it's worth the hunt. It's worth tracking down those facts, those little insights of ancient writers, or just how something might have looked. I've just done a piece of research about what kind of fabric would have been on a bed, a Roman bed. Not immediately obvious, but it turns out it was probably linen. And then I kind of thought, well, that sounds too modern. But no, linen was made in Egypt in ancient times. It still is. People buy Egyptian linen because it's the best. So it's interesting just finding those facts and putting them into context. So I love it.
And did you choose to self-publish your novels for a reason?
I didn't choose it, really. The first novel I wrote to 14 different publishing houses, 14 or 15 different agents. I didn't have a single reply, not even an email, nothing. And that made it clear to me, probably, that LGBT history wasn't what publishers were comfortable publishing. So I had to think outside the box, and thankfully the world has the internet. Thankfully I could hunt around, and there are various places that will help you self-publish. So rather than just doing it directly with Amazon, through which you'll get a basic book with not a very clear cover of anything significant, if you pay a little bit to a company to publish it for you, then you get really, really lovely covers. Like the Love God was actually designed for me. I didn't put it together, someone else did, through the publishing company. And it means that you get a bit more of a professional look to your book. And it means that they proofread it for you, they help you. For instance, there are maps in the Love God. I couldn't figure out how to do that. Asked them, told them what I wanted, they did it overnight. So I've made that choice. I think it's the right choice. It costs money, obviously, but I have covered my cost of the first novel, and hoping the second novel will pay its own way too.
And I gather you have a publicity weekend coming up.
I do.
So can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, so the company that I'm using, which is called Publications UK, I'll have to look that up anyway. They they will do a publicity drive for me. So what they're doing is they're getting some readers to read the book and do reviews for me, which hopefully will then go onto the Amazon page where you can buy the book and therefore you can read reviews. And they are then going to do a weekend where they do quite a big push on social media. They're going to be sending press releases out. They're going to try and get quite significant figures, I hope, to be aware of the book, read the book, review the book. So it's quite exciting. I've never had anything like that before. So part of doing this interview is about.
So I'm sure there'll be a number of aspiring writers watching this right now. Do you have any advice for them?
First bit of advice is have fun with it. Don't beat yourself up about it. Don't get obsessed about all the detail right away. Just kind of have a basic go at it. Perhaps write down a framework of roughly what you think will happen. And then if it's historical like mine, you then have to just knit the history in and then just flesh it out with the storyline that you want as well. But the main thing is just enjoy it. Don't get het up about it. Don't get stressed about it. Because otherwise, what's the point? It should be fun.
Well, thank you so much, Martin, for this interview. I wish you every success with Queen Julius Caesar and your future novels.
Thank you very much.